Recognized for 5 minutes. Mr. Jones of New York.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I move to strike the last word. Our democracy is in crisis. We are living through the worst assault on voting rights since the Jim Crow era. The modern-day Republican Party, like fascist movements before it and like fascist movements across the globe, knows that it cannot win elections on the merits of its deeply unpopular policy ideas. Consider the GOP's opposition to the right to an abortion, a right supported by the vast majority of Americans, including majorities in states like Texas, Kansas, and Georgia. Consider the GOP's opposition to allowing Medicare to lower the cost of prescription drugs, a policy preferred by 88% of the American people. Consider the GOP's attempts to dismantle health care for millions of Americans, and even recent efforts to ban the history of slavery. The party of Donald Trump has become so extreme that the only way it can win elections is by disenfranchising Black and brown voters. And now they're saying they won't even certify elections. 2/3 of House Republicans and 3/4 of the Republicans on this committee voted against certifying the 2020 election. And GOP Secretary of State nominees this cycle in places like Nevada, Arizona, and Michigan have all said they would not have certified the 2020 election. This is a constitutional crisis, and the Supreme Court has been an accomplice. Since 2013, and the court's gutting of the Voting Rights Act in Shelby County v. Holder, Republican state legislatures across the country have been busy rolling back access to the ballot. They have doubled down on punitive voter ID laws, purged eligible voters from the voter rolls, closed accessible polling locations, restricted early voting and voting by mail, told elderly people waiting on long lines in the Georgia heat that they can't even have a bottle of water, and they have even made it difficult to register to vote. When Republicans lost big in the 2020 election, they intensified their efforts to disenfranchise communities of color. According to the Brennan Center, in the year 2021 alone, there were more than 440 Republican-led bills that were voter suppression bills that were introduced in 49 states, with 34 laws enacted in a total of 19 states. This all happened last year. And they were all aimed at making it more difficult for minority communities to participate in our democracy. This year has seen even more of the same. This is why bills like Congresswoman Nikema Williams's Expanding the Vote Act are so important. And it's why I'm proud to co-sponsor this legislation. Section 203 of the Voting Rights Act only works if we enforce it. And unfortunately, there is widespread non-compliance in many states and localities in this country. Today, we can fix that by enacting this bill to allow the federal government to take a more proactive role in notifying states and localities when they're about to reach Section 203 thresholds, and financially assisting them to implement Section 203 once they do. But our work to protect minority voters from racist and xenophobic voter suppression laws does not end here. The Senate has to abolish the filibuster and pass the Freedom to Vote John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act, which would restore the preclearance provisions that were gutted in Shelby County v. Holder. In doing so, Madam Chair, we would restore the promise of the Voting Rights Act, and we would strengthen our ailing democracy. I yield back.